All right, welcome to the show. Today, I'm so happy to welcome Anders Boulanger. He's a speaker, author, magician, founder, and CEO of Engagify, where they make teams and events more engaging. Anders, thanks so much for coming on the show.
I love it. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
So we met on LinkedIn. Surprise, surprise. I think I've gotten connected with a bunch of our guests on LinkedIn, but we seem to share an interest in engagement and having fun, and specifically the application of those things in the business world. Now, I hear the word engagement thrown around at these talks and conferences, and it's almost like as soon as something gets mentioned too many times, especially in the B2B tech space, it becomes a buzzword and it means nothing. What does engagement mean to you, and how do you define engagement for what you do?
Shift everyone's paradox on that. Like there's another buzzword. Yeah. Engagement can have this like HR connotation to it. You know what I mean? Like keeping people engaged. And we have a little bit different of a slant in terms of we're teaching people how to be engaging. So I think we can both agree that we're living in a world of distractions, right? Notifications, the work from home life is different, right? The multitasking on screens, the Zoom calls. There are so many things that take us away from, being in the moment with people. And so that what we're seeing is to kind of get that same connection that we need in this world of distractions, we have to kind of optimize our engagement skills. So that's where we kind of come from, that engagement. But if I were to define it, I would say it's the people being actively involved in something, and wanting to be a part of something, and if we can kind of create scenarios and work on certain skills, technology or techniques as well, to make people want to be a part of something, whether that is a sales pitch, whether that is a webinar, whether that is a trade show presentation, all of these things. If people want to be a part of it, it makes the selling so much easier. And so that's where we're helping companies, engagify their events and also their teams in terms of customer facing teams and the skills that go along with that. So we talk about engagement skills kind of.
That makes a lot of sense. And what I really resonate with there is that active engagement. So not passive, not information coming one way, but information going both ways. And how we talk about engagement, especially from a user experience perspective, is our brains have two modes. You're either kind of on autopilot and doing a lot of the tasks you need to do, or you are consciously absorbing new information, probably learning, when you're doing trainings, that sort of thing. And so engagement to us means switching the brain from that autopilot, that passive mode, to that active mode, where things are in your consciousness and you're processing new information. So tell me a little bit about your story. Clearly, you're experienced with this because you have an engaging background. It's beautiful to look at. And tell me a little bit about where you're joining this podcast from, and what's this background's doing for you from an engagement perspective? Because I noticed
at first when you said your background, I was thinking like my backstory, and then I'm like, this background, and we did talk about this. So I have this is our headquarters, Engagify office here, and it's just a white wall. I'll show you a quick video that will show you a really good example of this. So this is what it looks like if I don't do anything. So I turn on the lights and I'm sitting there. This is kind of making some effort, to actually do something about it. So now I'm going to take care of that backlighting because that's, causing some issues. So I'm going to close those curtains, turn off those lights, turn on my fun, funky lights, right? Then I'll go change, get a little bit better of a shirt on, zoom that in, and give myself a nod of approval. There we go. So that is just kind of like what I think about where in terms of a virtual engagement, let's make it look nice. Let's make it look interesting. Let's, not push people away in the first place, right? It's kind of like a Hippocratic oath, first do no harm, right? If people can see you well and hear you well, now you can actually add some other pieces, vocal variety, some performance skills, some body language, all of that goes into that, the performance skills piece. But this red background, the story that I wanted to kind of say was VMware is a big virtualization company, and they had me do a meeting with their marketing people because they were considering some different ideas for a virtual event. And the person who ended up hiring us, she confided in us that she was actually multitasking on 3 screens and was not paying attention I came on, she saw the red background and she said, "Oh, that's different." And then I kind of leaned in and shared something, to the camera like this. And she felt herself leaning into her screen. And she realized that this is the guy we want to MC our virtual summit, right? So this is kind of how we were able to make that event more engaging by being an MC. But the background was the piece that was that opening, that door opening, so that we can get our message across, right? And it's the idea that if people aren't listening or paying attention, it's pretty darn hard to sell anything, right? It is kind of the master skill of sales in that sense, that you got to have that, otherwise you're not going to go too far. So that's why I do the background. That's why I kind of make the effort every single call. So many people, and I know we're just talking virtual right now, but they work all day like this, head down, and then maybe they look in the camera when they have a virtual call, but usually they keep looking at the screen, right? So it's this idea that we need to kind of do a little bit more to try to mirror that, face-to-face interaction that we're trying to create.
I love that so much, and I wanted to share one of my little tricks to break the ice. I have this hat that spells out messages on little LEDs, and it's a great icebreaker to kind of set the vibe and tone for, especially a call if I'm a little bit nervous or want to really show up with a fun and playful attitude. It's fun to look at their profile or something that would be unique to them, put on the hat, and they can get the message going across my forehead. But it is interesting that there's small visual things that really show an intentionality and do a lot of the communication for us, where when we're not in person, you can't really rely on those vibes or that energy that is so much easier to get from another person, when you're sitting across the same table.
I completely agree, Andrew. And in a way that we talk about an energy level thing. 33% more energy is what we talk about for virtual engagement. And that's because here's where you think you're coming in terms of energy level, but here's actually where you're coming in because you're in a room by yourself, most likely talking to a camera that's kind of killing your energy, right? So to come in here, we actually need to come in up here just so that we're perceived at where we thought we were sending it, right? And that's kind of a tough switch for some people, to kind of find that right level. And the reason I really discovered it too was I was hired to do a virtual trade show booth welcome video for one of our clients. And they said, "Anders, we want it really peppy. We want high energy." I'm like, "I can do high energy. Don't worry. I got this," kind of thing. And I did it and I recorded and I'd play it back and I'd be like, "Man, that's flat. Like, that's not what I thought I was putting out." Right. And I'm like, "Okay, I'm just going to kill them with peppiness. I'm going to do it again." And I re-recorded and I'm just firing it. And I thought it would be just almost like too much, way too much. And I played it back and I'm like, "Okay, that's about right." So it really, there is that energy does get killed by the camera. And when people realize that, especially if they are maybe selling something that isn't really that exciting in the first place, like you got to bring more to the table then, because that virtual barrier really does exist.
So the virtual barrier is very real. I think we all feel that, working from home. When you and I first connected, you mentioned that you are a magician, and I was curious how that played into your journey to get here as, a professional engager.
For sure. Well, I find, with magic, the nice thing is you're able to kind of, hold people's attention, suspend disbelief. And it's something that allows you to kind of grab people and create that contrast, right? That defy expectations. So it is a great tool to use. The way I got started was back when I was 5 years old, got a Fisher Price magic set for Christmas and started doing birthday parties when I got to be 12. Paid my way through university, got a physics degree, and then I went full-time doing magic as an entertainer. And then I got trained by a man named Joel Bauer, who taught me how to do trade shows the right way. And so it was the idea of infotaining, of creating entertainment that has information embedded in it, so that we're creating a high engagement, high passion, message-driven presentation, so that there's the plot is driven by the solutions of the company. And yet there's magic happening and people just don't know what's going to happen next. And so they are just hanging on your every word. because they want to see what's going to happen, right? And so you're doing all kinds of, and I know you're into brain science and stuff too, Andrew, right? Like, we're spiking dopamine with the novelty and the reward piece to it, and so that people want to be a part of that, right? So that's part of how we make our trade show presentations work, and how we can gather such big crowds around a booth is because of this novelty factor of the fact that there's the unexpected will happen, right? And the surprise that comes from that.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons I was excited to talk to you, is that, I think there's a lot of folks who give kind of ambiguous instruction or guidance on being more engaging, being more confident, connecting with people, and it can get you riled up, maybe motivate you a little bit, but there aren't practical things I can do as Andrew to improve how I'm engaging with people. And, you have codified a system based on what you've learned. So tell us a little bit about those, how you kind of reverse engineered engagement, and what are some of those things that people can do that are really actionable?
Yeah. Okay, great. So one of the things that just came to mind earlier that you were talking about, the little hat thing that you were talking about, that you grab some personal information, not personal information, but public information,
personalized,
that you're going to put on your LED thing. Well, what we sometimes do is we'll actually project, make the lights on the same brand and project the logo of the company we're meeting on the back wall. And I always love when they kind of go like, hey, wait a second, like you see them notice it all of a sudden, right? And that is what we call you focused, right? This idea that it is about them. What's everybody's favorite radio station? You've probably heard this, WIIFM. What's in it for me, right? People want to know what's, if it's something that's going to benefit them or something that's going to threaten them. From a survival perspective, we want to know what that is, right? So we can continue living. And the same thing with engagement. That's what captures our attention, is things that are going to benefit us or threaten us. And of course, it's a lot nicer when we're working with potential clients, things that are going to benefit them, because we don't want to threaten them as much. But that does come into play as well. So with that little piece of information that you are making it about them, that is a you-focused piece. It makes it highly relevant to them. So one of the things that I'll do in some of our slideshows when we're working with a client is I'll have, of course, their logo in there and different pieces that we've customized it for them, so they feel like it's just for them. And it was, right? So that customization is very important. The other thing that we talk about too, in terms of kind of codifying it, we actually have an acronym. And maybe I'll walk through this real quickly if it's okay, Andrew.
Absolutely,
and it's called
that's why you're here.
Save You. So save, and then the letter U at the end, okay? And the U at the end is you focused. So we're kind of going at it backwards here, but that's that piece, making it about them, okay? The S in Save You is simple. So we want to make things easy to follow. Now, our brain is about 2% of our body mass, and yet it consumes 20% of our energy. So it's a bit of a hog on resources in that way, okay? And so because of that, again, from that survival perspective, if things get too complicated, we get, this is a bit of a technical term, cognitive backlog, okay? But it's overwhelm, right? So especially if you're selling tech or something that is a complicated kind of sale, complicated product, it's very easy to throw in too much jargon. It's very easy to just make things too many bar charts and graphs, and there's too many things on a slide. People can't follow it. And there's a point of people who are like, forget it. They kind of just tune out, right? So we want to, again, do no harm. So we need to simplify things down so that it's easy to consume, right? So never move faster than your audience's ability to consume that information. So that's the simple piece, okay? The A in Save You is authority, which goes to that kind of relevance, that expertise, that sort of thing. Really, even just how you speak about something, right? If you're passionate about something and you know your stuff, that comes across. People pick up on that, right? It doesn't mean you have to have letters at the end of your name, designations. That doesn't hurt. But the way that you speak about whatever you're talking about is a big indication of that credibility, right? Sometimes people will kind of, yeah, and then we do this and we kind of do that, and they got higher pitch and they're going up, and it just doesn't feel like someone's got a good grasp of what they're doing, right? So that's the authority thing. So we could go deeper into that, but we'll go into the V. The V in Save You is for visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. Okay, so visual, seeing; auditory, hearing; kinesthetic, feeling. We experience the world through those three senses. We have more senses, but we'll just kind of use those three. Okay, and everyone has a preferred sense. So I'm very visual. I talk with my hands a lot. You can see that in the video. Some people who are very auditory, they might have more kind of melodic voices. They might say things like, "Oh, I like the sound of that," or "Tell me more." They'll use those different predicates. And because everyone's different, sometimes we don't know what anyone's preferred system is. So when I'm dealing with a group of people, like at a trade show and I got a crowd of people, I do a shotgun approach and I just make sure that I'm using visual, auditory, and kinesthetic terms throughout the entire presentation so that it gets, it's very sensory rich in terms of that content. Because when we talk in corporate jargon, in what they call nominalizations, and nominalization is a nominalization. The fact that it's a big word that we don't really know what it means, right? And, we get taken out of the meaning so much, right? So in my trade shows, when we work with companies, or even when we help and do coaching with sales teams, if they get too jargony, we like, whoa, time out. Let's simplify that down, get it in real terms, and then add some senses to it so that people can get immersed into the picture that you're painting. There's a visual term right there, right? So in that way, people in their minds are actually getting into your material, into your communications nominalization, getting into your message, right? So a way that they can experience it in the way that they prefer, okay? So I know that's a little confusing, but the idea that we want more senses involved in how we communicate, because people, that's how they experience the world. And if we want them to engage what you are sharing, we need to do that, okay? So we get the S, the A, the V, the E. The E in Save You is we want to create some excitement. We want to make things special. We want to stand out and really elevate the moment, if you will. Okay, so I think it's fun to kind of create a little bit more, just take things to another level to create specialness, right? Like I think in a real engaging interaction, people are just so happy that they were there for that, right? And if we can create that more of the time, I just think people will keep coming back to us and they'll expect that from us time and time again.
Well, that's a great acronym, but I want to hone in on the excitement and what you just said. A lot of people listening will think, it's got to be special. It's got to be exciting. It's got to be, a special moment. Like that's a lot of pressure. How do I come up with making something special? That sounds like a lot of pressure. Do you have any ideas about, lowering that barrier to entry for people? Because if you don't think of yourself as a creative person, as a people person, as an engaging person, as a showman or showwoman, how do you create some of that excitement or specialness and make it something that I can start doing? And specifically in your trade show example, right? Because I was just at a conference and the trade show section was rough. People were kind of avoiding each other. It seemed like everybody's first conference back after a long time working from home. And it was an interesting vibe. So when you said huge crowd at a conference, I know people want some tips and tricks. What is that excitement, an accessible way to start some excitement at a trade show?
So excitement, yeah, you're right. It sounds like a big, you're like, oh, how are we going to do that? I think there is a couple of things I want to mention. One of them is raising the stakes, okay? How can we make things more important? And one of the best examples that comes to mind is if you ever watch an infomercial, when they do a demo in an infomercial, it's always like taken to the nth degree, right? Like, this rubber spray that they spray the screen door and then they put it in the bottom of a boat and then they, like that's a great way of raising the stakes. We also gamify at trade shows, and we will do things where we'll give someone a chance to win $2,000, right there in the booth. Okay, so it's gamified, and the fact that there's something in it for them, we're going to be spiking dopamine. People, have a chance to win, and also you're opening a story loop. And what I mean by that is you're starting something that's going to require closure. So the people walking by who see the person who get picked to have a chance to win the money, they're like, is this guy going to win? I want to see what happens. So they're need invested to get in, right? So creating an event or making excitement, is like, how can you just elevate that, the importance, make it more dire, and even sometimes danger can be a thing, but not real danger, just perceived danger, right? Another example, and I'm just pulling from my own repertoire, is I'll do a game of Russian roulette with staple guns in a trade show booth. So we'll load up one staple gun and we mix them up, and then I have 4 people help me with their intuition decide which one's safe. And then we talk about, safe decisions and dangerous decisions regarding the solution and the company and the industry and how we paint that picture. So that's, again, when you see something like that walking by, people go, what is that, right? That's so different. So creating contrast and standing out and defying expectations, that's a way to create, excitement and novelty and create differences, right? So if you just think about what is the normal way people do something and you don't do it that way, people will take notice. Now, you got to make sure when they do take notice that you have some sort of follow-up, because it reminds me, a trade show a number of years ago, they had, those green screen suits that people wear, like at hockey games, football games, and stuff like that. They had techno music come on, and these people would like dance like robots in these blue suits, and everyone would stop in the aisle and go, "Whoa, what's this all about?" And then the music stops, and they just kind of walked away into the booth. Like there was nothing, if you just grab attention for attention's sake, that doesn't have relevance, and then people just kind of write that off as hokey, right? So if you do have something that is going to grab someone's attention, create some excitement, create interest, then you need to make sure you follow that up with something that is on point, that can benefit them, that is, solution oriented, right? The tie-in is really, really critical. And when the tie-in is clever and makes sense, people just go, oh, they have that aha moment when they make that connection. And that type of learning really sticks in people's minds. When they inductive learning, they call it, right? When they have to put it together themselves, they're like, oh, yeah. So if you have that happening with people, whether they're learning, whether they're a sales call with someone, and you're imparting information that they need to remember because they need to make decisions based on that information, creating those aha moments is a great way of making things special.
Very cool. Well, I have this, going back to your sensory experience, I have this visual now of you being on the trade show floor with money and staple guns. It sounds like a lot of fun. And I think that's, the piece that's so important to me, hearing you talk about this, is if you're going to do any of these things, what you're doing is you're opening the door, letting people have fun with you. And a lot of people, especially in professional environment, can have trouble letting themselves have fun. Do you have any tips for, making the leap of, hey, at this event, I'm going to have some fun. I'm going to wear the light hat. I'm going to wave around a staple gun. You and I probably have a higher comfort level being a little bit goofy in the B2B world, but do you have any tips for people who maybe want the attention, they want to have fun, but it's hard to take the leap? And because I've been a professional for 15 years, how do I start being goofy at work?
Well, before I kind of address that, I think there's an interesting almost paradox that happens with that, like professional, right? Button up kind of thing. And then on the other side of it is the authentic you, right? Like showing the world a little bit more of your personality. And I feel like sometimes people are stuck at work in that professional realm. And what I find, and I'll tell you a little bit about some of the exercises when we do coaching with people, is that the more personality people show, the more intrinsically interesting that person then becomes. So it's kind of like, and when I say they're authentic, I just don't mean that they're not professional all of a sudden, right? It's still very acceptable and everything in terms of expectations of how things would be in business. But the fact that they're just showing a little bit more of them. Now, we have different personas, right? Like persona, the word actually comes from the masks that the Greeks would wear in the Greek tragedies and comedies. And the sona had to do with the sound. They were like amplifiers, right? Like little loudspeakers for the open air amphitheaters. But the idea that we have different personas, we're different people when we're with our friends, and when we're with our spouse, and we're with our kids, and then how we are at work, right? So there's different sides of us, and some of us don't let those other sides show as much, right? And so we do this exercise when we're coaching, and we have these different archetypes. And when I say archetypes, I mean almost characters that we have people do their presentation in. So one of them might be a kindergarten teacher, or like a football coach, a giant, a conspiracy theorist. There's a whole bunch that we have, okay? And so we then say, okay, you're gonna do your 2-minute presentation, but here's your archetype. And I usually assign an archetype that is so different from the person's actual, way they were doing it, right? So if they're really quiet, I want them really loud. If they're really monotone, I want them to be the kindergarten teacher, okay, children? Because the vocal variety is so high, right? So we give them these different things. And they're all like, and again, these are these people who are probably like, I've never done a class of theater. I'm not, okay, we make it a safe place. And we say, okay, let's just put this on its feet. Let's just try it out. When we get done the exercise and we debrief it, what ends up happening is people will say, I didn't think I could do that. I didn't think that was me, right? But I realized there's more to me than I thought, right? Like they realized, and the feedback they got from people was, it's not as kindergarten teachery as they think it is. It was actually just more interesting to listen to, right? And it's like, maybe keep a little bit of that with you, right? And that's what actors do when they rehearse. They'll blow it up one way, and then they hope a little bit of it sticks around for the actual performance, right? And so what I would say to people, is just try something new. Just go a little bit out there just to see how things are, and then get the feedback, right? That's so critical. And at a trade show, if you are being a little goofy, if you're having a fun time, you're reaching out and you're like saying, hey, man, I like your mustache, or whatever, people walking by the booth, you're just kind of trying different opening lines, or you're trying to just stop people. You're going to find that once in a while they work. And then that's going to be that like pat on the back to try to engage some more, right? To see what else can work. And so I think it's just those baby steps, and take a few risks, and then really listen to that feedback, because that'll tell you if it's working or not.
Those are great tips. I think for me personally, it was just understanding that other people are craving it. And going to your paradox, there's another paradox. You talked about raising the stakes, right? And you have the chance to win $2,000. But on the flip side of that, you're also kind of lowering the stakes. We're not in this professional risk reward relationship. Like, is he going to try to sell me? Am I going to make a bad decision? It's like we're shifting the perspective to this other area where we can have fun together. And when we're going to have fun together, we can really connect. And when we really connect, we can have a conversation and actually see if there's value to be exchanged. And so I don't know exactly how to articulate it, but I really see a paradox in the raising of the stakes and the lowering of the stakes. But I think people, they want to connect. And my experience has been, of course, there's times that I've brought some fun energy and it just wasn't reciprocated on the other side of the conversation, and that's fine. But the vast majority of people, they want to crack a smile. They want to hear a joke. They want to have a little fun. And I think that's been a big eye-opener for me as I've dived into having more fun at work and having more fun with what I thought were important B2B relationships that are all about data and dollars and cents. At the end of the day, these businesses are run by people, and people do business with the people that they want to do. And the better connections you have, the better you can take care of one another, because you understand what their needs really are as a customer.
Yeah. Andrew, I just want to add something to that. And like you said, when they are people, that's where I've had sometimes people say to us about our trade show services, going like, I don't know if that would work. I'm like, our industry is different. And you're like, are they humans? Like, yeah. Well, then it'll work, because this is based on brain science and human behavior, right? Like we've created these presentations and designed them to work because of how we are wired, right? And so this idea that we have a bit of fun and then connect on that level, so totally opens people up and warms people up to seeing things maybe from a different perspective. And that has been some of my most rewarding, presentations, is when I look around and see the diversity, all kinds of people, all kinds of ages, everything, and they're all experiencing it en masse, right? Together with a smile on their face. And it's just kind of a beautiful thing. And then they thank me at the end. And it's kind of like, no, thank you. Like, that was so fun, right? And so one of the tips that I learned earlier on was that I wanted to get buy-in from people, and so I'll stop a crowd and I'll get just like a little pod of people, maybe 5 to 8 people. And I'll say, look, I'm going to start. I haven't really started the presentation yet, but I'm going to crank in here. And it's not me doing it for you. It's us doing it for each other. Does that make sense? We're going to co-create an event here. Are you guys picking up what I'm putting down? Are you guys in? And I'm like, I know where I'm going. Are you coming with me? Kind of thing. And then they're like, yeah, Anders, go for it. Right. I'm like, okay, here we go. And then I really get into it. But when you get that buy-in, now that core group of people, like they're your biggest fans, and they know they're part of the show and they're helping. Right. And so, that co-creation for me, whether it's a presentation or whether it's an interaction that you made something special together, is important, because it's not just you talking at them, right? It's the connection, it's the dance. And that's just kind of a beautiful thing. And I think that's really speaks to the heart of engagement.
All about the connection. Well, I couldn't agree more. And I think that's a great note to switch gears and see if you can flap a little digital eyeball as well as you can engage people on the conference floor or in your sales trainings. Let me go ahead and send this link through the chat.
Same one? Or
it's the same one, yeah. So if you want to share your screen for the game, and I'll keep track of the timer here. So Anders did get a little bit of practice, like our last couple guests, but not extensive practice, just enough to make sure he knows how to play. And we're going to set the clock for 60 seconds. And when he's ready, I'm going to start the timer. And if he's flapping when the timer runs out, we're just going to let him run until he hits a pipe. So
60 seconds. I lasted like 10 in my warm up.
That's
here.
The thing is that it'll, if you hit a pipe, you just click again to restart, and it will automatically record your high score. So just keep going for a minute, and we'll take your highest score. If you happen to be flapping when the timer runs out, we're just going to let you go. But whenever you're ready, I will start the timer. You can just start clicking.
All right. Ready? Go.
All right. Not bad. Got a couple flaps in. Oh, yeah. There you go.
Oh!
That was a great second run.
Oh, yeah, I just let it drop there. No.
Those low early ones are tough.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, here he goes.
Oh, I gotta loosen up a little bit here.
It's tough when you're on the spot.
That's too much.
Yeah. You just gotta find a groove. We got about 20 seconds.
Oh, I'm sorry. Andrew, I feel like I'm letting you down here.
You're not letting me down at all. It's not my score.
What is your high score, by the way?
Just over 100.
Oh my goodness.
But you got to realize I demo this game all the time, and it's a little bit of a thing on our team. Okay, so that does it for your minute. I think your high score is 4. Let's see what happens when it pops up here. Yep. So you got a 4. You're not at the bottom of the leaderboard. You're not at the top. There's nothing to be embarrassed about with a score of 4, especially on your first day playing Tap to Flap. Part of the reason it's so engaging for the people that play it in our product in Incentive Pilot is that it's hard. And you get a little bit of that addiction going when you know your teammates are struggling to play it the same way. So thanks for being a good sport and flapping for a minute there. If people want to work with you for sales training, for engaging at a trade show, for anything that you guys offer, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you online?
Yeah, totally. Go to our website, engageify.ai. The AI is not artificial intelligence. It stands for authentic interactions. And so it's ENGAGIFY.ai. There you can actually get a free report on 4 ways to be more engaging. And as well, you can reach out to us about our engagement trainings for sales teams and for our trade show infotaining as well.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Anders. It was great having you on the show.
Thanks for having me, Andrew.